You're sitting on the couch at midnight, phone brightness turned down so it doesn't wake anyone, typing a number into a retirement calculator you found through a late-night scroll. You put in your age, you put in what you spend a year, you hit calculate, and wait the 2 full seconds it takes to load, already bracing for whatever number is about to show up. The calculator spits back a figure so large it doesn't even look real. Some number with 6 commas worth of zeros, sitting there like a locked door with no visible key anywhere near it. You do the mental math on your current salary. At this rate, that door doesn't open until you're old enough that retirement and old age become the same sentence. You close the tab. You've done this exact thing 4 or 5 times this year. Always at night, always alone, always with the same locked door feeling afterward. The number never gets smaller. It just sits there, untouched, waiting for a version of your life that has more income, more luck, or more years left than the one you actually have right now. Now hold that locked door feeling in your head, because this is the story of someone who ran the same math on the same kind of midnight couch and found out the door wasn't nearly as far away or as permanently locked as it looked. You're 25, same kind of late night, same kind of calculator, except this time you don't close the tab. You do one more piece of math first, a rule of thumb that shows up again and again in real retirement research. A portfolio can typically support withdrawing about 4% of itself a year without running dry over a long retirement. Flip that math around and it means you need roughly 25 times whatever you spend in a year, fully invested, to call yourself financially independent. You spend, modestly, about $40,000 a year. 25 times 40,000 is $1 million, not $5 million, not some fantasy number built for a life you don't live, with a house you don't want and travel you never actually planned. 1 million for the actual life you actually have, on the actual budget you actually run. It's still a big number. It's just a smaller, more honest big number than the one the calculator handed you an hour ago, and for the first time, it feels like something with an edge you could actually reach if you started walking toward it tonight instead of tomorrow. You open an investing app that same night and put in $400 automatically every single month into a total market index fund. The balance says $400. It looks like nothing next to $1 million, a rounding error. A coin dropped into a well you can't see the bottom of. Compound interest has never once cared how far away the number looks from where you're currently standing. Keep that $400 in your head, because in a few minutes, you're going to watch it quietly turn into something almost nobody expects. A finish line that arrives decades before the one everyone assumes is the only one that counts. You're 27, 2 years in. The balance is around $10,400. You've put in $9,600 of your own money. The market has added the rest while you were doing anything else with your evenings. You mention the number and the math behind it to a friend from college. We'll call her Priya, because there's always a Priya. She laughs, kindly, not unkindly, the way people laugh at math that sounds too simple to be real. $1 million? At $40,000 a year? She says. I'd need like $5 million to feel safe. She's not wrong that $5 million sounds safer. Bigger numbers always sound safer, right up until they become the reason nobody starts. She's also not investing a single dollar toward either number, because a number that large feels like it belongs to somebody else's decade, not hers. Some future version of herself with a better job, more discipline, more certainty about the whole thing. You don't correct her. You just keep quietly doing the thing that doesn't require any certainty at all. You're 30, 5 years in. The balance is close to $30,000. You've contributed about $24,000 of it. The other $6,000 showed up on its own, while you were at work, asleep, on vacation, entirely uninvolved in the process. Priya is still talking about eventually, the way she has every year since you first mentioned the number. You are quietly, boringly still putting in $400 a month, same day, same amount, no drama attached to any of it. You're 33, 8 years in. The balance sits around $54,000. You've put in about $38,400 total. The market has handed you roughly $15,600 more for the crime of not touching it. That same year, a stretch of bad headlines hits. A real downturn, the kind that makes people you know start checking their accounts daily. Your balance drops by almost a quarter in a few months. You don't sell. It isn't bravery. It's closer to indifference. You genuinely forget to check the app for most of a month, distracted by an ordinary life that has nothing to do with ticker symbols. Every $400 that keeps going in while prices are down quietly buys more of the market than it did 8 weeks earlier, at a discount you didn't have to be clever to take advantage of. 6 months later, the balance isn't just back. It's higher than before the drop ever happened, as if the whole scare had been rented, not owned. That downturn, the one that felt so loud in every headline you scrolled past, doesn't even show up as a dent by the time you look back on the whole 40-year arc. It's the kind of event that feels enormous in the moment and invisible in the average, which is exactly why the boring, undramatic choice keeps winning every single time. Priya, for what it's worth, checks her own accounts constantly during that same stretch, accounts that mostly hold cash, because she's still waiting to feel ready to start. She watches other people's portfolios drop in the news and feels, briefly, relieved she wasn't in the market at all. She has no way of knowing that relief is costing her more than any crash ever could. You've survived the part of this story that scares most people off completely. What happens next is the part almost nobody sees coming, the exact moment the math quietly flips who's actually doing the work. You're 35, 10 years in. The balance is close to $88,000. You've contributed $48,000 total. Priya finally starts investing this year, at the exact same salary you have, with the exact same $40,000 a year in expenses she's always had. She's 10 years behind a number that never stopped moving while she waited for it to feel less scary, and no amount of waiting ever made it feel more certain. It just made it later. You're 40, 15 years in. The balance sits around $164,000. You've put in $72,000 across those 15 years, a little at a time, on a schedule you stopped consciously noticing somewhere around year 6. For the first time, the growth in a single strong year rivals what you contribute by hand across 12 full months. The account has quietly started doing more of the lifting than you are, without ever sending a memo announcing the shift. Here's the moment almost nobody sees coming, and it's the entire point of this story. Run the math forward from $164,000 at age 40, at that same historical average return, with zero additional dollars added, not one more contribution, ever again, for the next 25 years. And by 65, that balance alone grows to right around $1 million. The exact number you calculated on the couch at 25, arriving on autopilot, with no further effort required from you at all. You've just reached something the FIRE community calls coast fire. Not full financial independence, not quit tomorrow. Just this. You could stop saving for retirement completely, today, redirect every one of those $400 a month toward literally anything else, rent, travel, a nicer life right now, and the money already sitting in that account would still get you to your number on schedule, powered by nothing but time and an average that already did its job. You don't actually stop contributing. Old habits are hard to unwind once they've stopped feeling like sacrifice. But you could. That's the part that changes how the rest of your life feels to live, whether you ever act on it or not. Think about what just happened here for a second, because it's easy to read past. At 40 years old, with 25 years still left until traditional retirement age, your job stopped being build the number and quietly became something much smaller, just cover today. The number was already taken care of, years before you noticed it had been. You didn't do anything dramatic to get here. You didn't cut every latte, or move somewhere cheaper, or take on a second job. You just started 15 years earlier than the version of you that keeps closing the calculator tab, and let an ordinary average compound on an ordinary schedule for long enough that the math did something that looks, from the outside, almost like magic. Stay with this, because the next 25 years tell you something about Priya too, and about exactly how expensive it gets to wait for a feeling of certainty that was never actually coming. You keep contributing anyway, because the habit is easier to keep than to explain, and $400 a month stopped feeling like a decision around the same time it stopped feeling like a sacrifice. You're 45, 20 years in. The balance is around $268,000. You've put in $96,000 total. You're 50, 25 years in. The balance reads close to $415,000. Total contributed $120,000. Priya, 10 years behind the exact same math, on the exact same salary, is only now approaching the number you quietly coasted past a decade ago. You're 55, 30 years in. The balance sits around $625,000. You've contributed $144,000 across 3 full decades, an amount that would have felt impossible to imagine on that first midnight couch, and yet arrived one unremarkable $400 deposit at a time. You're 65, 40 years from that first $400. The balance is right around $1,120,000, past the number you once thought needed $5 million to feel safe, with room to spare. Sit with the actual breakdown, because it's the whole story in 2 figures. Of that $1,020,000, the amount you personally contributed across 4 decades is $192,000, $400 a month, repeated so many times it stopped feeling like a number and started feeling like a Tuesday. The other $928,000 is growth you never worked an hour for, never watched arrive, and never had to earn twice. But here's the number that actually matters more than the final one. You were functionally, mathematically done saving for retirement by age 40. 25 years of extra working life followed that quiet turning point, and the only thing those 25 years were truly required for was covering the life you were already living day to day, not building the number you once thought needed your whole career to reach. Priya reaches her own million around 65 too, eventually, on the same salary, the same spending, the same math you ran on a couch at 25, just having started the real version of it 10 years later than you did. Same destination, same 40-year arc in the end. A full extra decade spent not knowing she'd already have arrived on time if she'd only started the clock the year she first heard the number and laughed at it. She doesn't know, at 50, that she's already running the same race you quietly finished at 40. She just knows she's still contributing, still watching the account, still waiting for a feeling of safety that was never going to arrive from a bigger number. It was always going to arrive from an earlier start. 10 years doesn't sound like much until you realize it's the exact gap between coasting and grinding for the entire back half of a career. Same ending. Completely different 25 years spent getting there. Mirror close. Somewhere right now, someone is sitting on a couch at midnight, typing a number into a calculator, watching it come back so large it doesn't look real. They're not wrong that the number is real. They're just looking at the wrong version of the question. Not how much will I ever need, but how early can the number I actually need start working without me? It's smaller than the locked door makes it look. And for a lot of people, it arrives years before they ever stop needing a paycheck, quietly, without an alarm going off, on an ordinary Tuesday that looks exactly like every other Tuesday, except that the math underneath it has already finished the job. If you want to keep watching what small, ordinary money actually does across enough time, subscribe before you go. This channel isn't about hot stocks or motivation. It's about what happens when you leave the boring stuff alone long enough to work. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial or investment advice. All figures assume an illustrative average annual return of approximately 8%, consistent with commonly cited long-term historical U.S. stock market averages, and use the 4% rule, originating from research by William Bengen and the Trinity Study, as a historical planning heuristic. Current financial commentary places reasonable safe withdrawal estimates anywhere from roughly 3.9% to over 4.7%, depending on methodology and assumptions, so treat 4% or 25x as a round illustrative planning number, not a guarantee. Actual returns vary and are not guaranteed. Investing carries risk, including loss of principal. Consult a licensed financial advisor before making investment decisions.